Guys, it's time for the experimental vinyl tag of 2023. Thank you to Mr. Alex at Motoric247 for putting together a list of questions and to encourage us to talk about experimental records. And you can't spell experimental without mental. What does that mean? I don't know. But I love the fact that we're talking about some stuff that's just a little bit off the beaten path. And frankly, you know, I'm easily bored with the conventions, both in music and also in YouTube videos. It's like we're getting very conventional. Everybody's following the same format. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Here's 5 records. Hit the like button. Okay, like it's time for people to break convention and get a little more creative. I don't mean it's time now in this video, but I mean it's time in general. Yes, if you look at some of my videos, I've done some crazy experimental stuff, and I like to mess around with the idea of what is film all about, what are cameras all about, what does sound like. Okay, what are you doing to the camera? I'm just screwing around. But experimental film, yeah, you could get away with that in the 60s and call that experimental film. Anyway, let's get to the questions already. Okay, the first one is to show a record that features minimalism. And I'm going to show you the granddaddy, one of the granddaddies of minimalism, Steve Reich. Music for 18 musicians. That originally came out on the ECM label in, I want to say, the 70s. And this is a re-recording with Steve Reich in the 90s. And according to the hype sticker, which I can't find, I think it won a Grammy or something, but it just came out on vinyl a few years ago on the Nonesuch label. Where's the lighting better? Maybe over here? The Nonesuch label, which is known for unusual classical and composer music, but also conventional music like Wilco and the Black Keys, the Nonesuch label. So this is a 2-record set and beautifully packaged. I think the cover on this is way better than the original ECM, which is sort of a drab gray, but this shimmering pool of crystal clear water. It's pulsating music, it's repetitive, it deals with his idea of music going in and out of phase. This was a major work when it came out. Lots of liner notes. There's Steve himself. To the point where it had such an influence that it's no longer considered avant-garde. It's now Steve Reich and Philip Glass and Terry Riley. They're almost mainstream now. So, the Nonesuch label, after Christmas, maybe in January, they seem to have a 50% off sale. So I got this beauty. 2-record set, thick vinyl, very thick cardboard, 50% off, whatever. I don't remember what the retail price was. Let's see, recorded October 1996 at the Hit Factory, New York City. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, Bernie Grundman. You got to have Bernie Grundman, mastered by Robert Ludwig and lacquer cut by Bernie Grundman. So there you go. If you didn't love it then, you vinyl Bernie Grundman fans would love it now, right? Just because it's got Bernie Grundman's name on it. Wow, check this out. There's a foil stamping of number 3400. I didn't know it was exclusive. It's exclusive to me. Minimalism. Okay, what about a record that conveys a dreamlike state? Okay. I'm going to go with a experimental composer that you guys don't think of very much because he lived a long time ago. Have you guys heard of Charles Ives? Charles Ives, considered by some to be the greatest American composer. And he lived from, I think, about 1875-ish to 1950-something. And he was experimental in his day. And he was doing things in the 1890s and the early 1900s that nobody else was doing, nobody else was thinking of. Bitonality, polytonality, polyrhythms, aleatoric music. That's a term that John Cage uses where there's some chance involved. Anyway, did I even tell you what the music is? I'm specifically referring to the piece called The Unanswered Question, which is one of his most famous pieces. It's like music asking this big question about what is life, or what is God, or what does it mean to be human, or something like that. I don't know. He was a big fan of the Transcendentalists Emerson and Thoreau. They were all in the New England, kind of the same time. I'm a big fan of Ives. I have a zillion of his records. I have his books, so just bear with me while I tell you about Charles Ives, America's greatest composer that you've never heard of. So his father was a Civil War band leader. Marching band music was a big part of him growing up. And his father used to do experiments on his children. That's not considered ethical today. Experimenting on his children musically, saying, okay, Charles, you sing this song in the key of D, and you, little brother, you sing the song at the same time in a different key. So Ives was very familiar with this polytonality. Not quite atonality, but multiple tones, keys going on at the same time. And he talks about seeing marching bands from two different streets come together and play two different songs, and he's standing in the middle going, this is really cool. The cacophony of two bands playing at the same time. So that's a part of a lot of his music, and a part of this piece, The Unanswered Question. Three groups of musicians playing at three different places on the stage, in different tempos, different conductors, but the music, most of the music is this very sort of choral-like string thing that just kind of floats in air, and that's like the dreamlike quality. You know, you're in this dream state, and then this trumpet blasts out of nowhere that's playing these notes that have nothing to do with what the strings are doing. Now, this is conducted by Elmer. Did I say Elmer? No. Not Elmer, the other one, Leonard Bernstein. I've got a few recordings of this, but because we're talking Elmer Bernstein, this is only like a 5-minute piece. It is sort of a part of a larger piece, but because Leonard Bernstein, I'm going to just mention, Leonard Bernstein did a whole massive series of lectures entitled all about the unanswered question, 1973, Harvard Lectures. This is a 2 or 3 disc set out of 5 or 6 pieces. These long, kind of boring academic lectures. You can watch them on YouTube, talking about his philosophy of music and culture. And I watched one the other day. It was talking about Noam Chomsky. But to Leonard Bernstein, The Unanswered Question by Charles Ives is a major work, and it asks the musical question. In this case, I think the musical question is this modern music like all BS and noise, or is it for real? I think that's one of the questions he tackles. Okay. Go listen to The Unanswered Question. There's a million recordings of it on YouTube and your favorite streaming service. It's just kind of floaty with interruptions. You know, that's how dreams are. You're floating, and then something interrupts you. You got to go to the bathroom. You're flying. You're falling. Whatever. Okay. Animal sounds. This was the hardest one. Experimental music that has animal sounds incorporated. I really don't have anything. This is a tall order, but here's what I came up with. Okay. I'm sorry if this offends people. I am, really. If this is one of your relatives. Arthur Lyman, Taboo, Volume 2. The New Exotic Sounds of Arthur Lyman on high fidelity stereo. And so Arthur Lyman was part of this cultural thing in the 50s that was really about, well, they called it exotica. And that was a part of a bigger cultural movement, which was a very mainstream suburban movement. Hey, we're in the jet age now. You can get on a plane and go to Hawaii or Polynesia or Fiji, and you can buy a Hawaiian shirt, and you can come back with some little fake amulets and shrunken heads, and you can make rum drinks with umbrellas and stuff. And while you're doing that, you need to listen to records like this, Arthur Lyman, who did this sort of exotic jungle sounding music. And it's hokey, I get it. It's not experimental in the sense of the high art that we're dealing with on some of these others, but there's animal sounds all over it, okay? And it seems like he's dropped in sounds of, exotic birds and maybe monkeys or baboons. So you're in the jungle and you hear all these wild animals, but you hear the drums, and here comes his music. Now the thing here that's a little bit experimental, he spent a lot of time in Hawaii. A lot of his records have Hawaiian themes. He recorded all of these records supposedly direct to whatever tape without any or little overdubbing. And he recorded it in the natural reverberation of this giant thing called the Kaiser Aluminum Dome. Kaiser Aluminum, which is a big aluminum company, and they had this giant dome, which he used, and he let his sound bounce off the wall. So he had a 2 or 3 second delay, natural reverb that even today is considered a high quality recording in terms of the sound quality. So that's the slightly experimental part. What I don't get is what I read that says he doesn't have any overdubs. So how did the animal sounds get in there? Did you have monkeys reading the sheet music? Because the animal sounds are always in the intro and the outro of the songs. Arthur played vibraphone, very influenced by Lionel Hampton. So it's kind of conventional jazz, but high quality recording. And if you're having a tiki themed party with the rum drinks, you definitely need to have some Arthur Lyman. He made a bunch of records. Okay, what's next? Strange Beauty. Experimental music that is strangely beautiful. And I'm sorry we did not get to observe the 90th birthday that just occurred of Morton Subotnick. Morton Subotnick, one of the great pioneers of electronic music, synthesizer music, modular synthesizers. This is a Buchla. This is not a Moog or a Moog. It is a Buchla, which is sort of a competitor of Moog, I guess. And it says that this record, Until Spring 1976, is the 4th work in his Butterfly series. So he's evoking, the beauty and the flying patterns of butterflies. And it says there's 3 qualities: thrusting out, becoming, and being. So the weird thing about this that makes it very experimental, okay, electronic music in its day was experimental anyway, and he got some weird sounds and weird textures out of his music. But the thing that's I consider even more experimental, he got no keyboard. He does not use the standard 88 key keyboard with notes. He basically said, I reject notes. I reject modern harmony, modern, counterpoint. Forget notes. Sound is one big continuum. I don't care if that's a C or a C sharp, and I don't care about a chord that's got, 3 notes in it. It's just sound. So that's one thing about Subotnick that is very experimental. Right here it says electronic music as sound sculpture. So I think these records are wonderful, especially his ones that are all electronic. He did some other composing on traditional instruments, but check out some Morton Subotnick. It is strangely, oddly beautiful and weird and unconventional, and he doesn't use the notes that we use, and he's still around. Okay, we're coming to the very end of this thing, guys. Number 5. There will be an encore, so don't hang up just because we're getting to number 5. Okay. Last one is a experimental record that deals with a visual artist, and here's a visual artist that you probably don't know, Steven Spiker. He's from Switzerland. This is art that he made, and the unique thing about this record is this is really a trio performance. It is performed by Greg Osby, famous American saxophone player that you should know, and Florian Arbenz, drums and percussion, and Steven Spiker, the painter. All 3 of them performed this music together in Spiker's studio. As the musicians were playing music, Spiker was interacting with them and drawing or making these paintings as the music was going on, so they could all interact with each other. Now, you can watch these videos of these songs being made. So the entire video performance, each song is like 1 painting per song. It starts with a giant, almost table-sized blank white canvas and just starts twiddling with some kind of weird paints or markers. So which song is this? I don't know. The album is called Reflections of the Eternal Line, and Spiker is a well-established visual artist working out of Switzerland. Florian Arbenz is also from the same city, Basel, in Switzerland. Basel is the home of the giant pharmaceutical industry. So it's not a village, it is a big urban center. And Florian Arbenz, I've talked to a few times. He sent me some of his records. And he was nice enough to include a little note and a postcard. I don't have to read it to you, but let's check it out. Oh. There's Florian with his drums and a postcard that he sent me. My new recording with Greg Osby. Thanks again, etc., etc. Now he's done like 12 records since COVID started, so you can check them out. These are mostly improvised songs, not necessarily, but there's a lot of, if you're a free jazz fan or an pure improvised jazz fan, you'll dig this. Osby is really all over the, he's blowing hard, let's say. Anyway, what did I want to say? Yeah, so each song has its own visual. And which one is this? Does it say? Okay, so if you're a student of history, the name Arbenz might be familiar to you. Now we're going off track, guys. Arbenz is a famous name of a famous leader. And when I interviewed Florian, I asked him, are you related to the president of Guatemala, Jacobo Arbenz? And he said, yes, he was. And Jacobo Arbenz was actually of Swiss descent. How he ended up in Guatemala, I don't really know. But Florian was like I don't know if he knew that much about the history, but Jacobo Arbenz was one of these many leaders in Central and South America who was ousted in a coup d'etat by the U.S., by the CIA, to kick him out so American corporations, especially United Fruit, could go in and just take over all the land. And he was the guy trying to stand up to them and saying, this is our country, stay out. And the good news is they didn't assassinate him like they have for dozens of other opposition leaders in South America. But since then, Guatemala has gone through dozens, maybe hundreds of massacres and death squads and, persecution of activists. So interesting connection if you're into history, which I think we should be. And, I'm kind of very interested in this section of our history that's not well known. And personally, I think these little factoids are more important than what pressing plant did this record come from? Is this record pure digital or pure analog? Or, to me, like hundreds of thousands of people were genocided. The Mayans, hundreds of thousands of Mayans were killed. And the U.S. was complicit in a lot of it, either supporting the regimes or... Anyway, you know what I'm saying? Music is important. But if you're concerned about, is this digital or analog, you got first world problems. There are people who have, unfortunately, third world problems that we get to contribute to. So stay tuned for what's next, guys. The beautiful thing I love about experimental music is anybody can do it. You don't have to be a great musician. You just have to have some tools to make some noise. Let's do that. Let's do some stuff here. Can you see the record? I don't think you can see my record. Oh. Let's put on a record. What happened? What have you done, Greg? I'm playing a record through take a record that's pressed off center, play it through a digital delay. What are you doing? I'm experimenting. Experimental. That's right. Let's go handheld. Yeah. That's better than anything you've heard on FM radio lately, right? Join my band camp, guys. I don't have a band camp.